Good evening, everyone. How is everyone? It's Friday. Oh, it's Saturday. I almost said it was Friday. It was Friday yesterday. Like, this is my life right now. This is literally my life. I don't remember what day it is. I work every day, pretty much. Oh, either that's a shadow or I'm getting really great crow's feet, guys. All right. So, let's talk. Denise Richards of, well, she was an actress. She's currently starring on Beverly Hills 90210's reboot or something. She was married to Charlie Sheen. She's been in lots of different shows and films and all kinds of good stuff. She modeled in Playboy. Um, she has two children with Charlie Sheen, and she has been starring on The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills for at least a couple seasons. Now, on the most recent reunion show, apparently a fan noticed that she had a lump in her neck. And apparently, this lump in the neck had something to do with her thyroid. Your thyroid can swell when you have either two things going on: a goiter, which could make your thyroid underproduce or overproduce. It can be a tumor, which can happen. Thyroid cancer is actually very common. It can be a lot of different, like low different electrolytes can affect it. There's autoimmune disorders that can actually attack your thyroid. So there's a lot of things that can cause goiters in your neck, which is a swelling of the thyroid. Typically, when someone has this type of issue, they will need to see a doctor to get the proper diagnosis to determine what is causing the goiter and then what the proper treatment would be. Screenings done by an endocrinologist, who are the doctors that manage the thyroid, because the thyroid is part of the endocrine system, would determine whether or not you have overactive or underactive thyroid. So you could be hypo or hyperthyroid. The most common form of thyroid related issues is hypothyroidism, and it is most prominent in women. A lot of women, in fact, will develop hypothyroidism between their ages of 30 and 50. Graves' disease, the opposite form, which is a hyperactive form of the thyroid, where it releases too much thyroid into your body, is not uncommon in women either after you've had a child. So thyroid issues can plague both men and women, but women tend to have this issue more prominently than men. Denise is in her 40s and well within the age range where this would be impacting her, and she would be a candidate to develop something like this. The most common reason that someone would develop hypothyroidism is an autoimmune disorder called Hashimoto's disease, which actually attacks your immune system actually attacks the thyroid. Now, there are lots of other ways that you can develop hypothyroidism as well. Your thyroid can just stop working for who knows why reason. You can have issues with your pituitary gland, which it doesn't send the right signals to your thyroid to work. So a lot of different things can impact it, and the thyroid is a very, very, very important part of your body. The gland system as a whole, and I'm sorry if I'm going to get a little scientific here, but the gland system as a whole is really critical to your overall function, health, and survival. I know this because my son has a disease called hypopituitarism. So her recent photo on Instagram has me shaking my head. I'll show you the photo, and then we can talk about what she got wrong and why I'm concerned that this is what she's telling people. I promise you that I know what I'm talking about because my son is hypothyroid, adrenal insufficient, growth hormone deficient, testosterone deficient. Dude, my kid has no hormones in his body. All right, so we have here we go. On Instagram, a couple days ago, she said, "It's amazing to me in a short time eliminating gluten from my diet how much my thyroid has changed. A few of you pointed out after the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills reunion that my thyroid was enlarged. You were right. It was something I ignored until pointed out. I had no idea how much our diet really can affect our body. For me, how toxic gluten really is. I thank you all who sent me messages. So, this was, sorry guys. This was her message to the almost 1 million followers that she has on Instagram. And it's concerning because diet plays zero factor. Absolutely no factor. 0% zero factor in the health of your thyroid. So, this is actually pretty crappy advice, to be honest. Now, a certain portion of people that do have Hashimoto's disease can develop other autoimmune disorders like celiac disease. Celiac disease is a disorder where the body cannot digest the cilia that's part of gluten, okay, or can't digest parts of gluten. Now, you would know that you have celiac disease because you would get really, really sick from gluten. And celiac disease can lead to people like throwing up, getting really sick. It's very challenging disorder, and it's almost always treatable when people cut gluten out from their diets. There's this massive trend going on through Hollywood and through the natural health world that says and pegs gluten as the enemy. The gluten is like enemy number one in terms of all things health. And the fact of the matter is most people have zero intolerances to gluten. In fact, science has shown that there isn't really even a thing such as gluten sensitivity. Most people will either have celiacs or nothing. Now, some people might get bloated from gluten, but you can get bloated from a lot of things. So, here's the deal, you guys. In the world of hypothyroidism, the last thing that you want to be doing is depending on diet and not relying on the help of your endocrinologist, because there is literally zero evidence that cutting gluten from your diet will improve the function of your thyroid. I'm not lying. But people like Denise likely believe this because she probably sees, I don't know, a naturopath or some quack doctor, because she's in Hollywood and that's what they do. And they're probably telling her that if you cut gluten, if you improve your diet, if you take a bunch of supplements, you don't have to take medications. And these same type of providers will also make you feel really scared about taking the medications that are used to treat hypothyroidism. Now, the problem is that hypothyroidism is not the kind of disease that you actually want to mess around with, because if you do not treat your hypothyroidism, you can get really, really sick. So, before we go into some of the responses, I just want to give you a little bit of information about what the symptoms are of hypothyroidism to give you an indication of what can happen when you don't treat this disease, okay? So symptoms of this can include fatigue, and this is all coming from the Mayo Clinic. Fatigue, increased sensitivity to cold, constipation, dry skin, weight gain, puffy face, hoarseness, muscle weakness, elevated blood cholesterol level, muscle aches, tenderness, stiffness, pain, stiffness, and swelling in your joints, heavier than normal or irregular menstrual periods, thinning hair, slowed heart rate, depression, impaired memory, and enlarged thyroid glands called goiters. It can also impact your body's ability to metabolize things, which leads to incredible weight gain. And the memory loss that they're talking about, that it's not just memory loss, you guys, it's brain damage. If you don't manage your hypothyroidism, you can literally damage your brain. My son has hypothyroidism. The number one thing that we have to talk about every single appointment when we see his doctor is, have you missed a single dose of the thyroid medication? Why, you ask? Because some parents believe that you don't have to give your children the synthetic versions of thyroxine. So the thyroid releases a hormone called thyroxine. There are synthetic versions called Synthroid or levothyroxine. Now, the synthetic formulas, like they require routine blood draws. So people that have hypothyroidism do have to have their blood drawn typically in the early stages every 3 to 4 months. And then once they get more stable, it can be every 4 to 6 months. But it's an ongoing process because the management of hypothyroidism isn't a perfect science. There's not a single dose that is matched by weight or body mass. Every single person has a different level of thyroid that they need. And so because of that, they have to measure different hormone levels in your body to determine whether or not you need adjustments. Because if you take too much, it can actually put you into hyperthyroidism, which can make you really sick. And if you don't get enough, it'll make you sick too. So it's hard. You have to work with your doctors routinely to find the right balance. Typically, once you find the right balance, my son's been actually on the same dose for a few years now, but we know when his thyroid is going low because he gets really, really, really hot and cold intolerances. He will have issues where he can't sleep. He will have issues where he sweats profusely. We will see issues where he has he'll get really chubby. And probably the scariest thing that can happen is low blood pressure and low heart rates. Meaning you can have resting heart rates like in the 50s and 60s when your thyroid is low. The thyroid literally is the engine behind your body. You do not want to be running low. You don't want to treat this with a diet because if you do, you could put yourself in a very precarious situation that could put you in cardiac arrest. Don't play around with this, please. All right. So, as you can imagine, and I'm sorry this is so like in your face, but I get really irritated when I see this kind of celebrity woo. It's not okay. We don't mess with this kind of stuff. So as you can see, naturally people were kind of, they gave her mixed feedback in terms of their responses to her. And overall, some people were like thanking her and other people were really irritated with her. I would be in the group that's really irritated with her. So, oops. I hate it when it does this. I'm sorry, you guys. I hate it when my system does this really much, so much. I am running a slideshow and it's not. All right. So one person was like, Denise, I have Hashimoto's disease. It's a beast, but gluten-free, only organic foods and intermittent fasting help so much. So if you have Hashimoto's disease, the literally only reason you would need to do any of that if you also have celiac disease. This person says, what does the diet consist of? I've been battling my thyroid for years and I don't believe the medicine works. So I'm trying to find different alternatives so I can just get it under control. So what these types of updates from someone can do is provide false hope, which is why I'm a really big really strong advocate against speaking out against this kind of stuff, because you don't want to give anyone false hope. This person said, I'm going to the endocrinologist this week, check hormones and thyroid function, hysterectomy at 37, and my lifestyle had to change drastically as far as diet. So important. Cannot lose a pound without eat clean 89% of the time. Then someone recommends a really whack woo book called Medical Medium. This person who's into yoga says, absolutely, diet is everything. I went from flaring every month with endometriosis pain to having a flare-up in over a year after going plant-based and gluten-free. Gluten is only toxic. And then this person actually got irritated because they said, gluten is only toxic to you if your body rejects it. Please don't all go gluten-free. Some people need it. It's not a fad, people. Amen. And then this person says the opposite. Gluten is super toxic. We have literally evolved to a point where our bodies are no longer able to process it. Gluten almost killed me. Okay. This person told her to get rid of her implants, which are probably more toxic than gluten. I would say probably so. This person asked how she got enlarged. And then this person says, eliminating gluten is for people with gluten intolerance and celiac disease. In no way does this help anyone else, and it's not a healthy alternative. I have both Hashimoto's and celiac, along with plenty of other comorbidities, and it's sad to see people with such a large platform spreading misinformation and making it harder for people who really need gluten-free to be taken seriously. It's not a fad, it's a life-saving way of eating. This person says, I have grave disease from having hyperthyroid, diagnosed at 16, and I went gluten-free and feel my best yet. It's a combination of many results from cutting carbs and gluten. I'm sure my thyroid is functioning at its best too. I've been gluten-free for 4 years. This Hashimoto girl says, yes, yay. You guys, there's literally 0.000% zero evidence that going gluten-free if you do not have celiac disease will do shit for you, period, point blank. In fact, if you go gluten-free, I wouldn't recommend it, to be honest. There's really no reason. And guess what? Your body needs carbs. When you cut out gluten, you cut out necessary complex carbohydrates that your body needs. There's this overarching, ridiculous, pseudoscientific theory that we never should have ever eaten wheat, and we should only eat plants because our wheat, you have to break down wheat and you have to cook it and you shouldn't eat it, and our bodies never evolved to it. To which I say, hobbycock, that's ridiculous. That's so stupid. The humans as a whole have evolved over millions of years. We have learned and evolved to digest many kinds of foods. What we eat today is not going to make us sicker. The only thing it will make you sick of is maybe that, if you have celiac disease. Otherwise, eat gluten. You need it. It has fiber in it. It has carbohydrates in it. And people that go gluten-free, it can actually cause weight gain. Because you know why? Because gluten-free pasta and breads and all those things have tons of over-processed and hyper-processed foods that have tons of calories. So lots of people will say, oh, I'm gluten-free. And then you realize you're 30 pounds heavier. Gluten is not the enemy. It is not the devil. And it's also not going to fix your thyroid. So, I will say it's extremely important for me to speak out against this kind of stuff because misinformation around treatment for hypo or hyperthyroidism is really dangerous. My son went into liver failure from hypothyroidism. You do not want to mess around with this. Don't. Please do not trust a naturopath. Do not go to a chiropractor. Do not go to any sort of woo crew, whack, quack. Don't go to Whole Foods. Don't go to the organic shop. Just seriously, don't. You know who can help manage this? Your doctor. And then you know what? The shitty part in all of this, you guys, even with proper management, you're probably still going to have symptoms. And that's the part that sucks. People that haven't had chronic illness that realize that they might not ever get back to their normal baseline with medications struggle with finding acceptance and desperately want a cure. And that's why recommendations like this can provide false hope and make people feel like it can get better. Can it get better? Yes. Will it be perfect? Never. Never. But it'll be a lot better than not treating your hypothyroidism. Denise Richards has a responsibility to the millions of people that follow her. This story has been picked up everywhere. It has been on CNN, Yahoo, People. Every single outlet is covering this story. And even though she only has 995,000 followers on Instagram, now millions of people have heard this, and now millions of people might heed this advice and try gluten-free, which will literally do nothing and potentially cause people to maybe go off medication that will save their lives. All right, you guys, I want to know your experience with this kind of stuff. I know a lot of you have hypothyroidism. I know I have a lot of medical mamas with kids that have this disorder. I have lots of people with chronic illness that follow me. So tell me your experience with these type of recommendations and how you feel it's impacted you and why it frustrates you when you see this kind of misinformation spread. Remember that celebrities are only celebrities. You don't necessarily have to believe what they say. And just because someone's pretty and has skinny legs and arms doesn't mean you should be taking any medical advice from them. All right, you guys, I'll be back later. Bye.